Hello and welcome back to the Burn KC ScorchCast. I am your host, Alex Blackburn, here to bring you the good Kansas City sports news. As always, you may notice something on my face here, if you didn't tune in last week, of course. Mustache is back in action, and there's a reason for that. We have a certain charity campaign coming up, and that is the Movember charity campaign, our second annual Movember charity campaign. Last year we raised over $250. This year I aim for $500. And I'm gonna make sure I have this well posted, well documented. Get your donations in, because you'll be supporting a great cause, men's mental health, and just accessibility to mental and physical health resources for men. Because as I said in the last ScorchCast, it's a severe issue, and it's a lot more severe than a lot of people think it is. So please do some research, donate your time, money, energy, whatever you can, to this cause. Like I said, I'm going to be putting up my Movember campaign here on Wednesday, November 1st. So be on the lookout for that, and let's raise some money. Let's donate our time, energy, and money to a good cause. So be on the lookout for that. As for the show today, we have some college football we got to talk about. A certain monumental upset happened that I will go take a deep dive into, as well as some Mizzou and K-State football talk. We've got some. Got to go over the Chiefs. I know that this past weekend did not look great, but we still got to go over it, and it's not as bad as you think. I promise. Then we got some Sporting Kansas City talk, and then a few things to go over with the Blues, KU men's basketball, and a little chat about the Royals as well. So, strap in, sit tight, enjoy the show. Okay, so let's talk college football. So, if you were living under a rock, you may not have seen that Kansas invited the Oklahoma Sooners, the Oklahoma Sooners football team, the number 6 ranked Oklahoma Sooners football team, number 10 in college football dogs to this point. We haven't released the rankings yet. We will release the rankings very soon. But if you weren't watching TV on Saturday, or keeping up with social media, or reading the paper the following Sunday morning, or just again living under a rock, you may not have seen that Kansas pulled off a monumental upset for their program. Kansas beat the 6th/10 ranked Oklahoma Sooners at home, at the Jayhawks home, 38-33, in perhaps the biggest regular season win in Kansas football history. I mean, I'm not even sugarcoating it. Like, I'm not hyperbolizing. This is perhaps the biggest win in Kansas football history in the regular season. This not only is the first time since the Jayhawks have beaten the Sooners since 1997. This is also the Jayhawks' first win over a top 10 opponent since 1984. I should rephrase that. This is the Jayhawks' first victory over a top 10 opponent in the regular season, since 1984. And this is the first top 10 win over a top 10 opponent at home since then as well. This also puts the Jayhawks, and stay with me here. This puts the Kansas Jayhawks into the Big 12 title game conversation. Now, as the great Charles Barkley once said, we are going to start a dialogue. Kansas has a chance to be in Arlington come December. A chance. There's no guarantees. The Big 12 is wide open, though, this year. You've got Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas State, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, and Kansas in kind of a six-way race in West Virginia, too, for that spot in Arlington. It's insane. This is the closest the Big 12 has been in the regular season in a very, very long time. No one's put their head above everybody else. The closest that you can say is Texas, and if they lose against Kansas State next week, which in all likelihood can absolutely happen, this race gets incredibly interesting. And especially if OU goes out and loses Bedlam too, just all sorts of crazy stuff can happen because of this upset. This is a huge win for KU and a huge game for the Big 12. And to say that Kansas football is in the conversation for the Big 12 title is something that we've really only ever said once. Like one time. Back in the 90s, I know Glenn Mason had some good teams, but I mean, it was OU Texas versus everybody else. And it was that way for a very, very long time until that infamous 2007 season where it was Kansas and Missouri at the top. And then, of course, Oklahoma too, because Oklahoma just bushwhacked Missouri in the Big 12 championship. Just overall, you look at this and you're just like, man, has Kansas turned it around? Has Lance Leipold made that big of an impact in his 3 years as head coach? And I say yes. I think he's up there for coach of the year candidate because he has turned this program into a contender. And I've been saying it. I said it last year too before the season. I was just like, look out for the Kansas Jayhawks. And yeah, they went 6-7, but they started out that season 5-0. And you know, it's going to be interesting to see how Kansas does from here on out because they do still have a couple of tough games left. They've got Iowa State and they've got Kansas State. Those are the only two games that I think will be tough contests. Texas Tech, maybe, but judging by how they've played this year, and I think they lost their starting quarterback too for the season, I don't see it. I don't see Texas Tech being a hard game. Now, that being said, it was a tough contest against an Oklahoma State team that everybody thought was dead in the water until they beat Kansas and Kansas State back to back. So, and I don't think Texas Tech is anywhere near that level. I don't think they turn around and bounce back this season. It'll still be a game that will need to be watched, but in my opinion, Kansas really only has two tough contests left, and that's the Sunflower Showdown and this upcoming week. Because you're going to Iowa, you're going to Ames to play Iowa State in a night game, and the record that Iowa State has at night in Ames is unmatched by pretty much every other program in the Big 12. Like even Texas and Oklahoma, like they're really really good at night games for some reason. It's just such a sabermetric stat. Like great, you're good when the clock passed 6. Congrats. You still got to play, the other 18 hours of the day. 16, I don't know. But yeah, that'll be tough. One major thing of controversy for Kansas is Jalen Daniels versus Jason Bean. Jalen Daniels was dressed and on the sideline for the OU game. Now, a lot of KU insiders said that Jalen Daniels was not going to play, but he was dressed on the sideline and warming up. So the question is, does he play versus Iowa State? I think there's a potential that we could see him in some capacity, but as of right now, Jason Bean is still taking first team reps. And I know a lot of people are saying, well, first team reps don't matter until, Tuesday and Wednesday practices. Well, that's a span of 2 days. Monday practices matter too. And the fact that Jason Bean is taking the majority of starter reps, in fact, I think he took all of them, is telling where the Jayhawks are going to go when they travel up to Ames. There's a possibility that Jalen will play, but Jason Bean's probably going to get the start. And a lot of people are putting his confidence in the question. I think after that win over Oklahoma, though, his confidence has to be at an all-time high. And with Jason Bean, you get that kid some confidence in him, and he can fly. He can fly. He's a great player if he has some confidence. So I'm interested to see how that Iowa State game goes. I think if Kansas can pull off a convincing win, I think they turn a lot of heads and are finally recognized as a contender, because right now I think they're a dark horse. I think a lot of people see them as the outside looking in team, but I think if they win, if they go up to Ames and win that night game and they win it convincingly, the sky's the limit. So we'll just have to see how that goes. As for Missouri's coming off a bye this week. They didn't have a game. It's probably a good thing, though, because they have a huge game coming up. And that's going to Athens to face Georgia. Athens, Georgia, not Athens, Greece. That'd be crazy. But they're going to Georgia to face the number 1 ranked Georgia Bulldogs. That's not an easy win for those of you keeping track at home. um, this is going to be Missouri's toughest test yet, and this is going to prove whether or not they're for real. Even if they can do so much as just keep it close and interesting, I think we can count Mizzou in as a for real team to make the SEC championship. Now, that loss is going to hurt, and they may need some help in order to get there. But if they can go into Athens, one of the toughest places in college football to play, and at least keep it close with Georgia, I think it's time we start a dialogue of Missouri officially being one of the better teams in the SEC. And I think Drinkwitz, again, has saved his job with how he's done this year. I mean, I was one of those guys that was just like, man, Drinkwitz is on the hot seat this year. If he doesn't pull a 8+ win season out, he's done. And he still has time to choke that 8+ win season away. But uh, he also has time to potentially make an SEC championship with the roster that he has. I mean, Brady Cook is serviceable at worst, and he has one of the best wide receiver rooms in the entire nation and one of the best front sevens in the nation. And when you combine all that together, you have a really good team. And you're getting more good players too. If Williams Waneri is committed, he's the number 4 ranked player in the entire nation. So you've got a lot of skill right now and a lot of skill coming in. So the future is bright for the Missouri Tigers. And if they can go into Athens and they can go in and potentially upset the Georgia Bulldogs, if they win against the Georgia Bulldogs, then we have to start a dialogue of Missouri going to the college football playoff. And a lot of people are just like, oh, you got to be kidding me. They lost to LSU. They kind of gave it away against LSU. And the referees didn't help either. And that's coming from a Kansas fan. Like, I truly think if Missouri goes in and beats Georgia on the road, they're a serious college football playoff contender. And if they can go and win the SEC championship, I think they're a shoo-in. I think the winner of the SEC has been in the college football playoff every year since it started. Every year. So what makes Missouri different? I truly don't know, especially if they can win out and win the SEC championship. I think they are right up there with the Oregons, the Washingtons, the Michigans, the Florida States, Ohio States, and all those teams that all the people are talking about for the college football playoff right now. The college football playoff rankings release this week. The opening college football playoff rankings released this week. And Missouri, if they are at least, or if they're not at least in the conversation, then I think the committee's doing it wrong. So we may need to start a dialogue on the Missouri Tigers. As for Kansas State, Will Howard still looks good, and a lot of people owe him an apology because a lot of people wanted Avery Johnson to start the rest of the year because Will Howard, didn't have that great of a performance against a better than we thought Oklahoma State team. So it's going to be interesting to see how they perform against Texas. Texas is going to be a huge litmus test for this team. Can they make a run at the Big 12 championship? They are right in the conversation for it, and I absolutely believe they can. That Oklahoma State loss hurts, and the Missouri loss hurts too, to a degree. A lot less than the Oklahoma State loss hurts. But, that's their only conference loss. So, they can even still lose to Texas and make the playoff and make the Big 12 title game. If they win out and win convincingly and have a lot of help. um And I think what a lot of people are doing is, if Kansas State wins against Texas, they're going to win the Big 12 title. They still have Kansas, and they still have a couple other teams too, if I remember correctly. Because they still have Kansas for sure, and it's in Lawrence. That'll be a tougher than a lot of people think game. There it is. So after Texas, you know, it's easier than I thought it was. But you got Baylor after Texas, which they should stomp Baylor. And then you have Kansas, which that will be a huge game. That could be game day, if college game day. If both records stand, if Kansas wins to that point and Kansas State wins to that point, and then you have Iowa State, but you have them at home. So it's going to be interesting to see. Iowa State is one win away from bowl eligibility as well. So that's another factor for Kansas is, they may be playing a little harder than normal, but, and not just because they're playing a ranked team. But as for Kansas State, I think they have every opportunity in the world to win out. I think they can beat Texas. Texas has shown chinks in the armor, and it's going to be intriguing to see where this Kansas State team ends up, because the ceiling is Big 12 champions once again, and if they have I'm talking a ton of help, potential college football playoff conversation maybe needed. It's a 2-loss team, and generally that means a death sentence. But this college football season has been so incredibly weird that we'll just have to wait and see. So it's intriguing. Honestly, I'm interested to see where the Kansas schools end up and the Missouri ends up here in that conversation, because all three teams are competitive for not only their conference titles but potential college football playoff berths. So we'll just have to see where everything goes, because it's going to be a real interesting 4 weeks. All right, to the Chiefs. To the Chiefs. Oh man, that was a debacle. I mean, the defense gave the offense every opportunity to put that game on ice, and the offense just gave it away. The whole reason it was 21-9 or 24-9 was because the offense put the defense in really bad situations. And the main people at fault for this loss is the wide receiver room, Andy Reid, and Brett Veach. I think a lot of people are really, really upset that the Chiefs have not brought in a wide receiver. An adequate wide receiver, I should say. They brought in wide receivers. A lot of people, including myself, honestly, because really outside of Rashee Rice and Justin Watson, Justin Watson, what wide receivers are adequate on this team? MVS can't hold on to the football. Sky Moore can't make a catch. Mecole Hardman makes dumb decisions. And Richie James is trade bait at this point. So the wide receivers need to earn Mahomes' trust. I've seen a lot of people saying, "Well, Mahomes isn't doing a good enough job of trusting his wide receivers." I'm not even going to talk about Kadarius Toney. Sorry. Um, I wish we would use him as a wide receiver and not a running back. But um, a lot of people are putting this on Mahomes. It's not on Mahomes. He was sick yesterday. You honestly want to put this on Mahomes after he worked out with his wide receivers throughout the offseason. He wanted that trust to be put into those guys. He wanted to trust those guys. He can't, though, because there is so much incompetence in that room. I mean, there is. We're on week 8 now. Or week 9, maybe? Week 8 or 9. There's no excuse anymore. We're halfway through this season. And there's no excuse anymore. This falls on Brett Veach for not trying the wide receiver market. This falls on Andy Reid for making boneheaded play calls that don't fit the personnel. This falls on the wide receiver room most of all, though, because they can't do their job. The reason the Patriots were so successful for so long was not just because of cheating, but that's off the record. It's on the record, whatever. But the reason the Patriots were successful for so long was because they had those guys that, aren't going to look pretty on an NFL roster, but were reliable. The difference between those Patriots teams and the Chiefs team right now is that they're guys that don't look good on NFL rosters, and they're guys that aren't reliable. So the fix is to go grab someone. Go get Justin Jefferson off the Vikings for, a reasonable price. I highly doubt they do that. That's wishful thinking. It is. But, a guy like that catching passes from Patrick Mahomes, even T. Higgins. Go see what T. Higgins is doing. Go see what Hollywood Brown is doing. Hollywood Brown! I'm talking about Hollywood Brown being the answer for the Chiefs at wide receiver. The guy couldn't catch at all when he was on the Ravens. And he's now on an Arizona team that makes him look like one of the better wide receivers in the league. Because they have nobody else. Imagine him with Patrick Mahomes. Like, please, figure out wide receiver. That being said, all this being said, this is just a wake-up call loss for the Chiefs, in my opinion. I think they'll be just fine. I think they make the playoffs. They still maintain the 1 seed in the AFC. They still maintain the 1 seed in the AFC West. Things are not exactly ideal, but they're fine. The Chiefs will live. And so long as they do some learning to make the rest of the season go well, I think they can just use this as a learning experience. This loss should be nothing more than a learning experience and not the start of a monumental collapse. Because honestly, if you don't fix the wide receiver room, things could get ugly really quick. Because you're going to Germany to face a Dolphins team that is red hot right now and has one of the best offenses in the league. When you allow one of the worst offenses in the league to put up 24 against you because of the mistakes that you make with your offense, that's not going to be allowed with the Dolphins. They're going to capitalize on every single mistake. The Broncos didn't. And still won by more than 2 possessions. Yeah, more than 2 possessions. Right at 2 possessions. It was 15. If we're gonna get into semantics here, I digress. I apologize. But you look at this Dolphins team, and from what I see a team that can destroy the Chiefs if they put what they put out against the Broncos next week. That team's going to walk all over you if you have that showing next week. And that's with a top defense in the NFL. Because really, yeah, this defense is one of the top defenses in the NFL. Realize how many chances that defense gave that offense? It was 14-9 until the fourth quarter. And it was 14-9 from the get-go of the second quarter. So the offense has to do something. Something. Otherwise, this season is in big trouble. And I'm not saying that the Chiefs won't make the playoffs. I still have full faith that they will. But they're sure as heck not going to make the Super Bowl. They probably won't make the conference championship with this kind of performance. So it'll be intriguing to see what adjustments are made. I'll just say that right now. And if there's no adjustments made, someone needs to get fired. Someone needs to get traded. Something needs to happen. I'm tired of the complacency. All the Chiefs fans are tired of the complacency. I know we lived through 2-14 seasons. I know we lived through abysmal quarterback play, abysmal offenses. But what I watched yesterday was perhaps the worst Chiefs game I've watched in like a decade. It was that bad. So, well, the Colts lost. Well, I guess that was 2013. So, yeah, a decade. I guess the Titans lost too in the playoffs. But listen, in terms of quality of play, that was the worst Chiefs loss I've watched in a decade. In terms of quality of play, because it was horrible. Horrible football. Anyway, on to football instead. Let's talk about Sporting Kansas City. All right, you may notice I have changed shirts. It's incredibly hot in my apartment. I just turned the heat on a couple days ago, and man, that heat be heating. It is very hot in here. I might turn it down a little, just a little. I know it's still cold out. It's only gonna get colder. So, anyway, on to Sporting Kansas City. Um, they beat the crap out of St. Louis last night. You know, I have Apple TV um, right now, and I'm very glad I got it because I was able to witness the best soccer game I've ever watched last night. It was fantastic watching Sporting Kansas City just dismantle St. Louis, a team that had beaten them 4-0 and 4-1 in the regular season. And yeah, Sporting did have one win against them. Um, you know, it was a close win, but it was a win. But looking at those 4-0 and 4-1 victories that St. Louis had over Kansas City in the regular season, mind you, St. Louis also won the best record in the MLS and won the Western Conference regular season title. This is a good soccer team that Kansas City's going up against. And they just slacked them at home. So 4-1 victory over St. Louis. Um, this comes after they got a shootout win versus San Jose in the wild card. That was another huge win. Tim Melia is a god. Um, and gosh, this Sporting Kansas City team looks top form right now. They're capitalizing on chances. They're playing incredibly good passing game. Um, the defense is playing out of its mind. I mean, Sam Davis? Yeah, Sam Davis looks like the best defender in the MLS right now, and he's 21 and does not let anything by him. I mean, this defense looks really, really good. And they got to continue to look good because, frankly speaking, we may be talking about Sporting Kansas City making a run in the playoff. If they can, it's so. What happens next? If you don't know the MLS playoff structure, it's similar to what the MLB, NBA, and the NHL has. It's series based. And for this round one, it's best of three. And right now, the 1 seed in the Western Conference is going up against the 8 seed in the Western Conference. Best seed versus worst seed. Sporting Kansas City eked into the playoffs. I mean, eked into the playoffs. It came to the last game of the last week for them to be guaranteed a playoff spot. And once they were guaranteed a playoff spot, it technically wasn't even in the playoffs. You had to get past the wild card round, and that was against San Jose, who was also on a streak of their own, but it was a losing streak. And you know, the San Jose came out with a chip on their shoulder, and they played very, very good soccer until the shootout, and they kind of just crapped the bed in the shootout. So mainly because Tim Melia is one of the best shootout goalkeepers in the MLS. I mean, that's the main reason why. But looking at how the Sporting team played against St. Louis in the pouring rain, mind you, it should be optimal for St. Louis. It should have been optimal weather for them. They are a quick team that doesn't love possessing the ball. They love transition though, and they love scoring. So this should have been their game because goalkeeping in the rain is not fun. Defending in the rain is not fun. But it just wasn't. I mean, it was so sloppy on their end. And now you got to go to Kansas City, and Kansas City has new life breathed into them for the soccer team. And in my opinion, yeah, you got to thank the players, obviously, but Peter Vermees is a huge, huge part of this success in the playoffs so far. He's been there before plenty of times and is one of the best coaches in the MLS. And the fact that people were calling for his job at the beginning of the season after, only scoring 3 goals in 10 games, yeah, I understand it, but let Peter Vermees cook because now you have a team that's on the verge of just tearing through the playoffs after just handing St. Louis's butt on a silver platter. If they can do it again, in my opinion, there's nobody in the MLS that can beat them. So it'll be intriguing to see what the game in Kansas City looks like. The game in Kansas City is going to be on Sunday, November 5th, and I believe it starts at 5. I'm not sure if it's going to be on um, main TV. I think it's still going to be on Apple TV. So if you need some Apple TV, I will say this: they are offering free trials, and for both Apple TV and MLS All Access or whatever, for the playoffs. So just word of advice there if you want to watch that Sporting Kansas City game, especially if the Chiefs go out and just doo-doo all over themselves again. So, um, I'm not saying that's gonna happen, but I'm saying if they have a showing like they did yesterday, that Dolphins game is gonna get real ugly real fast. So, well, I digress. Congrats to Sporting for even making it this far. A lot of people thought you were dead in the water when, you were 10 games in and only scored 3 goals and not gotten a single win. Oh, including myself, I was one of those guys. I was just like, man, Sporting stinks this year. But proving a lot of people wrong. So let's get into a few other things here, and then we'll wrap up. All right. So I wanted to start with a quick chat about the Royals. Um, there was an article put out by the Kansas City Star that detailed some discrepancies in the Royals' stadium planning. Um, It had said that the arguments between the Royals and Johnson County had reached a major impasse because the Royals wanted an extra $4 to $6 billion in taxpayer revenue to pay for their stadium, and a lot of people did not like that. And the Royals had to come out and say that that statement made by the Kansas City Star, mind you, the the newspaper in Kansas City. That statement was erroneous. That statement was taken out of context and potentially made in bad faith. There's apparently some bad faith negotiations going on between the Royals and Jackson County. And you have to wonder if Frank White has anything to do with this. Again, I have no idea what goes on behind closed doors. No idea. Zilch. I know just as much as you do. But the fact of the matter is, even if those $4 to $6 billion projections for taxpayer revenue, they bumped it down to a billion, mind you. So better, but still a number that starts with a B. I guess technically a O, but you get what I mean. But just even so, Where's the money to make this baseball team better? Where's the money to buy players that will number one stick around, and number two actually bring productivity to this baseball team and bring this team to the playoffs? Where'd that all go? We had it in 14 and 15. What happened? Like, enough about the new stadium renovations. People want a better baseball team. And if the Royals are going to take their ball and go home, or go elsewhere, I should say, whether that be Kansas or Timbuktu or Vegas or wherever, they're not going to Vegas, the A's are, but potentially. But if the Royals are just going to cry and moan about how they can't get taxpayer money, take a look in the mirror. Look at yourselves in the mirror and look at the court of public opinion for 1 second and understand why people are upset, why people aren't giving you money. Because the team sucks. They're bad. They're awful. They're the second worst team in the MLB, behind the team that has lost complete control of itself. So unless you want to be lumped in with the Oakland A's, get your team straight. That should be priority number one. Forget this new stadium idea, like the 3-8 tax or whatever you want to, whatever accounting BS you want to throw at us. Forget that for a second and understand that the only way that you're going to even get a cent out of either county that you're considering is if you better this team. Because if you don't, people are going to stop coming to games, especially when you don't have them on television even. You got to go to you got to go to an organization that has filed bankruptcy because of how little people use them. Because they came into the sports marketing place, into the sports marketing industry, and completely torched it. They took away St. Louis Blues games. They took away Royals games. They took away a ton of MLB and NHL games. For greed. Because team ownership followed the dollar. A dollar that probably wasn't even their dollar. It wasn't even Bali's dollar to begin with. It was probably taken out on loan. So, I know I said I was going to keep this Royals rant short. I apologize. My grandma Debbie actually had some really good points that she directed right at the Royals on Twitter. I'm not going to show it just because I have not gotten permission to, but if you want to go to the statement regarding the Royals and look for Debbie Meyer, she had some pretty good points. Shout out to my grandma. But yeah, Royals, enough about the Royals. The Kansas City Blues will be going to Cincinnati to begin their playoff journey as they go up against the Cincinnati Wolfhounds. Cincinnati's got a great team over there. It'll be interesting to see how the Blues fare when they go to Ohio. And wish them all the luck. It's coming this weekend, and it's going to be fun. I think there's going to be a live stream for it as well, so be on the lookout for that. As for KU men's basketball, um, they lost their exhibition match against Illinois. A lot of people are overreacting to it. Like, super bad. Super badly overreact. Just very. I have seen. Oh, the Kansas Jayhawk basketball team is going to be fine. They have plenty of talent. This is the first time they have played an NCAA opponent this year. Their prior game experience comes when they still had Arterio Morris, mind you. By the way, screw him. He's a alleged predator, and yeah, no, gross. But uh, you went up against the Puerto Rican national team. The Puerto Rican national team. And yeah, you went up against NBA players too. But there's a strict difference between that level of competition and the level of competition that you face versus Illinois in an exhibition match, no less. If you were looking at Bill the whole time, he wasn't taking this game seriously. Neither were the players. Necessarily, I should say. They probably did take it a little bit seriously, but the real season doesn't begin until Kansas tips off against NC Central. And that's against NC Central, mind you. You guys are overreacting to October basketball. Relax. Anyway, that's our show. Um, Another reminder, Movember does begin Wednesday. Be on the lookout for that donation link. I will be hammering it that first day. I might even do a little bit of streaming or anything like that to promote Movember. So be on the lookout for that as well. Again, I am looking at doubling the number of donations that we received last year, which was 250. We can certainly do it. $500 should not be that tough to raise, and it will go a long, long way. So be on the lookout for that donation link. This has been the Burn KC signing off. Have a great night. Have a happy Halloween tomorrow. Stay safe. Have fun. Don't freeze to death. It's supposed to be the coldest Halloween in 32 years in the Kansas City area. So don't freeze. I won't be out. I'll be in class. But yeah, for those that are going out, be careful, be safe, have fun, and eat lots of candy. This has been the Burn KC. This has been Alex Blackburn signing off.